Good evening, everybody. I am starting a little later than planned. Paul Sterling here, author of Argue Less, Love More, and tonight we are definitely going to be talking about conflict. And the two core places in conflict, there's a conflict between me and you or someone else, and an internal conflict. So what we're going to do is look at what creates conflict, how do you resolve conflict, how do you lean into it, and resolve it quicker rather than run from it and collapse. So this is going to be a live interactive call. I definitely want participation. So it starts by you typing in who you are, where you're calling in from or watching from, and what time it is in your area. Because we get people from, at least I'm telling myself, we get people from all around the world. So these calls we run several times a day, one at 9 a.m. in the morning and one at 6 p.m. in the evening, West Coast time. And it's between me and several of my partners and their whole team. Pretty much the brainchild of this from Love Coach Academy. Debbie G from Spirituality Gone Wild, and me, Paul Sterling, from, as I said, Argue Less, Love More. And tonight we're definitely going to dive into what it takes to create the relationship of your dream. Just had a cat go by. I have a dog over here. They all, as soon as I get on a call, they all want to be part of it. So the other thing I'd love to do is hear from you what creates the biggest conflicts in your relationship. And right now, with this whole social distancing, the challenge there's more conflicts than ever. I work with couples from all around the world over Zoom, and it's a big challenge. And so I'm going to try technology here. I got a new iPad, so I could do this. So let's see if I can make this thing work. I want a round of applause if it works. I'm going to be impressed. But basically, have you ever wondered why the people you love the most can be the most difficult to talk to? And let's see if I can actually do this where I can. Yes, there it is. I can circle, I can point. So the idea is what creates conflict? How do you resolve it? How do you avoid it? And how do you work through it? How do you lean into it? At one point, I got to meet Tom Crum. Tom Crum was John Denver's bodyguard. And I forget the exact title of his book, but it was something like The Magic of Conflict. And he was an Aikido master. And we got to talk a little bit about that. And so the other place that I'm coming from is I studied with a guy named Marshall Rosenberg. He created something called nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication was definitely a turning point for me in my relationship. So some of this stuff you're not going to be able to read because it wasn't designed to be on this little iPad that I have right here. It was designed to be on a full screen. So there's going to be some technical glitches, but Tony Robbins was a mentor of mine, a teacher, and my boss at one point. Early on, I was a commercial fisherman in Alaska, and a guy named Robert Kiyosaki flew to Alaska and taught a course called Money and You. And it was my first course in Anchorage, Alaska, many years ago, on personal growth, on the idea that you could actually change the way you think and change your whole life. And then Robert introduced me to Tony Robbins, or introduced me to the work of Tony Robbins. Sorry, didn't mute my phone. And then what happened is I went and studied with Tony, and then was part of his volunteer staff, and then got hired on and worked for him. And he was my boss. And one of the things he taught me was the quality of your relationship based on the quality of your communication. And when your communication falls apart, so does your relationship. The other quote, which I can't read exactly down there, but basically it says, how we treat each other when we're scared, hurt, vulnerable will decide the quality of our relationship. So that is that. That is Marianne Williamson with a copy of my book. And if you want to join, there is a place you can join. You can take a snapshot of the screen. I have a Facebook group where I put videos and information, all of this stuff, so that you can become part of this. So I would love to see it. And maybe you're commenting and I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing comments right now, so I don't understand what's going on with my my machine. All right, so what I want to do is find out which side of these are you on and which side do you want to be on. So your relationship feel like it's over here or over here? And I went through 1 divorce, 4 broken engagements. The first 18 years of my career was being a commercial fisherman in Alaska. So I was not exactly trained to handle how to resolve conflict. I was more trained to how to create conflict. And what I want you to think about is, are you swimming when it comes to conflict, swimming upstream or swimming downstream? And so if I would love it if you type in which one that is for you. And I'm going to see if I can get the comments working or not. Yep, it seems like they're starting to work now. So yes, here we go. It is the first part about how to transform conflict, go from combative to compassionate, from closed down to curious. And even though it looks like it's prayer, it's not exactly. So what I want you to do, I can see you out there in Facebook land, is to hold your hands together like this. And I'm going to switch screens for a second. So hold your hands together like this. And when I say go, press really hard with your right hand. Now press harder, press harder, press harder. All right. So stop. So don't move your hand. Look at where your hands are. Or if your hands are like most people's hands, where they end up is they're almost in the exact same place. What did I say? Press really hard with your right hand. What did your left hand do? Most likely it pressed back. What does this have to do with communication? Everything. As soon as communication feels like force, when somebody feels like they're being pushed, what do? They push back. So how can we communicate, especially important, emotional, challenging things, in a way that doesn't feel like force? It doesn't create defensiveness. It doesn't have people lean out. So if you think about it, what do you want when it comes to communication? Do you want people that are leaning in, which is, that I am impressed with my little pointer and my pen. I'm probably overly impressed, but so connection, compassion, cooperation. So if you could type in yes, if that's what you want, if you want connection, compassion, cooperation, or do you want resistance, resentment, and regret? And I know, it's a silly question, but I know that I got a ton of that in my marriage. And it wasn't her fault. I didn't know how to communicate better. So that's how I communicated. I communicated in a way that felt like force. She would resist. We would end up in this conflict spiral and it wouldn't get better. This is the one place you don't want to recycle things. The issues would get recycled over and over again. And what would happen is, and here's the question, when your emotions go up, what happens to your intelligence? Your intelligence goes down. So what we're trying to do is make sure to try to put a cap on it, to not have the emotions get out of control. And when we communicate, we're communicating from 3 different places. So hopefully you have a pen and paper. This is participatory. This is not designed just as light entertainment. I am doing my best that I can to give you from 25 years of coaching couples about how to transform their relationships. I am digging out some of the best, most powerful stuff. So I definitely want you to be taking notes, typing in your answers, even though for some reason I'm not able to see your answers right now. I promise you one thing. I will review every one of them. And if you've got any questions, I will personally respond to them. And if there are personal private questions, you can direct message me and I will get back to you. So there are 3 places we communicate from. Number 1, and I'm going to switch screens for this so you get the full effect. We communicate from our head. And when we're communicating from our head, what are we worried about? We're worried about facts, figures, understanding who did what. And a lot of times it's like whose fault it is. Who are we going to blame? If somebody was bad, stupid, and wrong, we want to let them know. That is right there. And the challenge is, the challenge is, especially for the masculine, but the feminine too, we're rewarded for being in our heads. We're rewarded for solving problems, fixing things, getting stuff done, understanding them. Now, that works great in business and it sucks at home. So what's the next way we communicate? We communicate from our heart. What's really important when we're communicating from our heart is how do we feel? How connected are we? What's going on? Now, the challenge is when the head and the heart try to have a conversation, the head is going, if you only thought like I thought, you wouldn't feel the way you feel, and you shouldn't feel the way you feel, like you're upset right now or whatever. And the heart doesn't care about the facts. It cares about connection. It cares about intimacy. So the first step in resolving conflicts is recognizing that you're in one and also recognizing where you're communicating from. So I said there was 3 places. So how many places? 3 places. Hi, Sherry. Good evening from Canada, my crazy Canadian friends. Yeah, I imagine they're building a wall right now going, yeah, keep you Southerners out. You guys are wacky. All right, that's enough of my political commentary right now. I used to live up in Canada, up in Vancouver and Salmon Arm. Anyway, so we're either communicating from our head, our heart, or our hurt. And why I have this guy, it's a dinosaur, but it's your reptile brain. And when you're communicating from your reptile brain, the only thing you're really worried about is protection and safety. Like, who's the enemy? Where is the danger? And we treat it as if it's life and death. When we're in our reptile brain, we treat things like life and death. Our body reacts as if we're being attacked. And what happens a lot of times when we're in our reptile, we lash out and they end up trying to defend themselves, and it's reptile versus reptile. This is really normal. Reptile is really important because it was designed to help us survive when there was saber-toothed tigers chasing us, or commercial fishing in Alaska. that was incredibly dangerous. There was times I had to make really quick decisions. I didn't talk to my crew. I was captain. Now, that was great as captain, but it sucked when I came home and tried to talk to my ex-wife like I was still captain. So what we want to do is we want to learn when we're starting to get triggered. And what can we do when somebody gets really triggered? How do we get them out of being triggered? So there's a simple thing we can do when, all right, let me move this. When somebody is triggered, one of the things we can do. Now, by the way, here, just watch what doesn't work. What doesn't work when somebody's triggered is the brain talking to the head, talking and going, that's not logical. You shouldn't feel the way you feel. Just go and try to tell that, tell that to somebody that they should calm down and they shouldn't feel the way they feel. You kind of get the results there. The other one, which you would think would work, is to try to talk about feelings. All right, honey, tell me how you feel right now. The thing is, for the reptile brain, thoughts don't matter and feelings are dangerous. So you might want to repeat that. Thoughts don't matter, feelings are dangerous when somebody's in the reptile brain. So the most important thing, and by the way, when they're in the reptile brain, does it do any good to talk to them? Very little. What you need to do is, there's a simple question, and what you could do is say, I want to know the answer here. You can just type that in. I want to know. Do you want to know the one question, not the only question, but one question that's pretty reliable in taking somebody out of their reptile brain and back into their heart? That is critical. So what is that single question? When somebody's in their reptile brain, rather than telling them what they should or shouldn't feel, because that will just create, remember, more resistance. The more that you try to tell them what they should do, the more resistance you get, you end up, and then they'll say something that triggers you off to the races. So what can you do instead? You can ask this simple question. Honey, what do you need to feel safe right now? Because what does a reptile want? They want to feel safe. That's about the only thing that matters. Logic doesn't matter. Reason doesn't matter. A bunch of feelings don't matter. They're in fight or flight. They're in terror. And so the earlier you can catch it in an argument, the better it is. So one of the things to write down, this is a writer-downer. There's somebody once wrote, I think they wrote a whole book on it that said, don't sweat the small stuff. And you know what? I say that's totally wrong. It is easier. Let me see if I can draw one that makes, okay, this is my drawing test here. It is easier to deal with an acorn, that's supposed to be an acorn, round acorn, than it is to deal with an oak tree. What does that mean? It means it's easier to deal with a small conflict before it gets blown out of proportion, because once somebody's in their reptile brain, it's really hard for them and for you to get them back into their heart or into their head. So it's important to catch it early, so that you can go, oh, I'm getting a little triggered. Can we go back to connection? Because what happens when you ask somebody that's triggered like this, they're in their reptile, and you go, honey, what would it take for you to feel safe right now? What you're telling that person is that how they feel is more important than anything that you think or anything that you're feeling or anything that you want to say. Your feelings are my priority right now. And that's a really calming effect. If they don't think that they have to defend themselves or how they feel, they can be more vulnerable. And the whole thing about opening up and connecting is to do things that don't create defensiveness. And I'm going to get into that in a second. What are the things that feel like an attack? And hopefully, let me know, type it in there. If this is making sense to you, let me know that. And what are you getting from this? Because this is an interactive call here. And I'm going to put this in now, and I'll put it in later too. But I'm going to put it in the comments below. Let's see if I can do this. Modern technology. It's in the chat box. And let's see if I can put it in the banner. What I'm putting in there is, nope, it's saying I can't do that. Saying refresh the page. No. All right. But basically, I just put in something where you can go and get my book for free. So that's what I did. Here we go. Here is what happens in typical communication. This is what creates a lot of the conflict. We start down here at the bottom. Let me move some things around. Okay. By the way, I would love some, attaboy, you're doing great, something like that. For me, handling the technology here, I am great at relationship coaching, and technology's a little bit newer for me. All right, so something goes wrong. This is the trigger that starts the conflict. Something goes wrong, and where do we start? We start way down here in the bottom of how many times have you asked your partner, you go, honey, what's the matter? Nothing. And boy, do you know that it's not nothing. Then what happens is we move up and we go from denial to lay blame. There's something wrong and it's somebody's fault. And we move into, when I work with couples, it normally starts with it's their fault, then my fault, then no fault. And during the fault zone, people want to defend themselves. So the second phase here is to lay blame. It's their fault. The third phase is to justify. It's not my fault, it's their fault. It's not my fault that, we didn't have enough money in savings, or we didn't plan for this, or we didn't do this, or whatever it is. It's somebody else's fault. It's, I justify why I am the way I am. Then what happens is as we're moving up here, we end up in shame. When denial doesn't work anymore, we can't deny that there isn't a problem. And by the way, this works on the little picture. This works on the big picture. There's a principle. This is where, you can look at this globally. What do our leaders do? Our leaders denial, lay blame, justify, shame. And then what happens is just before there's a breakthrough and things are going to go great, they want to what? Quit. And there's two types of quit. There's quit and leave. And that's called divorce, or leaving the relationship, leaving the job, leaving whatever it is. And then there's another type of quit, and that's quit and stay. And quit and stay is basically they quit, they're not in the relationship really, they're not putting anything into it, but they're staying in it. So there's quit and leave, quit and stay. And quit and stay, I'll give you a quick example of that. I was working, one of my careers was as a business consultant. And how this applies here is as a business consultant, some of my clients were like the the city of Albuquerque. Most of their top management went through my course on quality, productivity, and leadership. And basically what I was a professional problem solver. When government or businesses had problems that they couldn't solve internally, they would bring me in. And the city of Albuquerque at the time was having a problem where they were going to have to privatize their auto mechanics and their auto repair. And they brought me in to see if I could bring up the quality. And when I did bring up the quality and transform that department, they sent me to a bunch of different departments. So that's a long way of saying, here's how I discovered this concept. I was working with the Parks Department. I interviewed this guy, and he said, you know, for the last, about 2 months ago, I came in and I worked my ass off. I contributed, I did extra, I did everything I could, and no one noticed. And it was really depressing. And that's really true. So this is important there, but it's also important in relationship. If you're contributing and nobody notices, and that is, it can be like, my partner tends to cook more of the meals, I tend to do more of the dishes. But we both want acknowledgement and appreciation every single night. Now, some of you are going, you should just do it. You shouldn't want appreciation. It doesn't work like that. If you want to have people feel good, you celebrate it, you acknowledge it, you appreciate it. So what happened is nobody acknowledged him and appreciated him for doing extra. So he decided, screw it. I'm just going to stop working, but keep coming in. And he did. And he said that was even more depressing because nobody noticed that either. So there's quit and leave. That's divorce, separation, whatever it is. And then there's quit and stay, where you basically have given up on the relationship. The relationship is dead. It just hasn't been buried yet. Hopefully this is making sense. Let me know if it's making sense to you or not. So that is all stuff that's below the line. And it's all about everything below the line is about the past. And if you want to create more conflict in the past, I've got a simple formula for you. It's called BSW. And I'd love it if someone would type that in, just BSW. And guess what BSW stands for? If you want to create a conflict, this is one way of doing it. Bad, stupid, wrong. Let somebody know how bad, stupid, and wrong they are. You're going to start conflict. Now, this magic line right here, this is the magic line. Below the line is all about the past. Above the line is all about, talking about the future. And the first place is to become responsible. And responsibility is not, down here, we're laying blame on somebody else. Responsibility is not about blaming yourself. And thank you, Sherry, for typing that in there. Responsibility is, how do we move forward? What are we going to do? Like right now, social distancing, COVID-19, all the rest of this crazy stuff going on. It's not my fault, but that we put together with me and Scott Katamas and Debbie G from Spirituality Gone Wild, Scott from Love Coach Academy, me from Argue Less, Love More. We said, what can we do to make a difference so that we can make a difference for people that are stuck at home, to give them skills and tools? And what possibility do we want to create right now? What's possible with this time? So we started this program every morning at 9 a.m. There's a call. Now, I only do 2 a week. Scott does 2 or 3 love coaches. Debbie does some. Other love coaches all do some, so that we all do a little bit and contribute. And they focus on many different things. My whole focus is on couples and has been for the last almost 30 years, 25 years. And part of the reason for that is they say you teach what you need to learn. And I definitely was a relationship disaster. So now I'm working to become a relationship master. So below the line, lots of conflict. You're going to create a lot of conflict when you're communicating down there. Then above the line, this is where you start becoming responsible. What can I do? And create possibility. And at the top of it here is love and trust. So when you think about it, what is it you want in your house? Do you want people who are communicating below the line or above the line? And one of the things you can do is take a picture of this and put it up on the refrigerator. When I was first learning about this, and I learned about this from a guy named Marshall Thurber. Marshall Thurber was Robert Kiyosaki. Now, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, became very famous around that book and his cash flow game and all that. Robert's a brilliant thinker in the world of finances. Robert's teacher was a guy named Marshall Thurber, who I ended up studying with, and Marshall and I were partners for a while. And Marshall, basically, if I think about it, one of the smartest men, one of the smartest people I know. And I learned this from him. So that's it. So now we're going to dive in, and hopefully this has been helpful. I'd love to hear if this is helpful. Oh, Sherry's saying, I love Spirituality Gone Wild. I've been joining often, and I seem to resonate with plenty of the shows. Yes, I love my partners. Debbie G is amazing, and she's got a huge heart. And she's always looking at where can she give, where can she make a difference. And Scott Katamas is the king of empathy. So very powerful team. Now, I talked to you about communicating from your head, your heart, or your hurt. So you might want to write that down. I communicate from my head, my heart, or my hurt. Now, this next part, when you put those two together, this is a really critical thing. When I get, when I get triggered, where do I go? And there's three options: here, here, or here. So the first one I'm going to go to is my favorite. It's actually not my favorite, but I realized it's what I learned from being a little kid, and it's called collapsed. And I have I think he's under the desk. Yep. My puppy is right here. He's about a year old now. But when a big dog runs up on him, what's he do? He lies on the ground, rolls over, puts his legs up. He collapses. Why? It's basically to protect himself. I am now 6'3", 200 and some pounds. When this whole social distancing locked in the house, I have stopped weighing myself. I actually do try to exercise every day. That's a different story. But collapsed is, I noticed that was a place that I would go growing up because my older brother was pretty violent. And anytime I tried to stand up for myself, he would beat me down. So the sooner that I collapsed, the safer it was for me. Now, that was great as a little kid, but as an adult in a relationship, collapsing doesn't get me what I want. And so what happens is that says needs. Let me try that again. All right. There we go. There's one reason to be in a relationship. This is another big idea. Write this down. Big idea. This idea is also the hub of almost all conflicts, is this big idea. You understand this, and it will change the way you think about relationships. What's the one reason to be in a relationship? And I know this is going to sound narcissistic or self-centered or a whole litany of other reasons, but there's only one reason to be in a relationship. It's to get your needs met. And when you stop getting your needs met, you can really love each other, but you stop getting your needs met in a relationship and game over, even if you really love each other. So the whole idea, especially right now, it's critical when a lot of times in life, if we have more social, we have our friends, we can go out to restaurants, we can go out to all these different places and things. We can get our needs met in many different ways. Right now, locked up in the house, your kids, if you have kids, your roommates, your partner, yourself, you have to be more creative in getting your needs met. So the whole idea here is, how do we get our needs met? Now, when somebody collapses, when I collapsed, what basically happens is I'm going, my needs don't matter. Now, that's when somebody collapses. Over here, on the other side, when somebody is combative, what they're saying is, my needs are the only needs that matter. When somebody collapses, they're saying, my needs don't matter, your needs matter. So conflict is when either two people are fighting over my needs matter, no, my needs matter, and nobody's giving and both people are trying to receive. Because in a relationship, almost everything we do is we're either trying to give something or receive something. Think about that for a second. Almost everything we're doing, we're either trying to give a gift or we're trying to receive a gift. And if two people are trying to give and nobody's receiving, two people trying to receive and nobody's giving, you have conflict. Another part of conflict is, I don't know how to get my needs met and meet your needs at the same time. So I'm going to either give up on my needs and I'll make you pay for it, or I'm going to get my needs met and then I'll end up paying for it. Because anytime that we make our needs priority over somebody else, or they make their needs a priority over ours, there ends up being some sort of conflict. So what's the answer? How do we deal with this? This is that different place right here, which is courageous. And courageous, that is where, and this is where the training of Marshall Rosenberg comes in, the nonviolent communication. I never really understood that I even had needs. Needs was the last thing I thought of. And when you're here in courageous, what you're trying to do is figure out, how do we meet both sets of needs over yours, but how do we meet both sets of needs, including with your kids? At one point, I was dating someone who had a 9-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old daughter, and we were making rules for the house. Now, normally, how do rules for the house work? And I got a whiteboard out. We're going to do it, like I do stuff you can see behind me on my whiteboard. How do you normally make the rules of the house? Well, the adults, because they have more power, make the rules, and the kids basically listen. And what that says at some levels is, my needs are more important than your needs. So what did I do? Went with the 9-year-old and the 12-year-old, and I got out my pen and I said, tell me about your needs. What rules do we want to put in place to make sure power? We can do different things. And one of the things that we came up with was how we watch TV. Now, my partner at the time wasn't quite as sold on this concept, in fact, but me and the kids loved it. And here's an example how we watch TV. Now, how we watch TV, how most people watch TV is they sit on the couch and they zone out and they stare at the box. And the box is the priority. And that wasn't how we did it at all. What happened is we would watch TV for about 5 minutes, and then we would wrestle, and we'd climb all over the couch, and we'd climb over each other. We'd have this whole wrestling match, and then we'd go back and we'd watch TV. And one point, she came in, and my partner, and she goes, well, if you're not going to watch TV, I'm going to turn it off, and we can watch it later. And I said, no, honey, we are watching TV. That's how we watch TV. This is a way that met the girls' needs and my needs, and we watch TV that way. That's that courageous part where everybody's needs matter, and we respect everybody's needs and boundaries. So when conflict happens is when somebody's collapsing or combative, and we're down here in the reactive zone versus the resourceful zone. So hopefully, let me know, making sense, not making sense. Is this working for you? I'd love to see your answer on what's making sense here. And I want you to be gentle on yourself, because when I learned this stuff, I saw how many upsets, arguments, misunderstandings I created because I didn't have the tools. I wasn't trained. I didn't know what I was doing. I hadn't met Marshall Rosenberg yet, and I hadn't learned nonviolent communication. So it's like if you gave your 10-year-old the keys to a Ferrari right now, unless your 10-year-old's really trained, they'd probably crash it in minutes. Why? Because they're a bad kid? No, because they're not trained. Most people are not trained in the world of relationships or trained in conflict resolution. So I want to give you that training. Today is just the start. At the end of today, I'm going to tell you, if you want to go deeper dive, I'll tell you several different ways you can do that. Because these are life skills. They're going to last you your whole life. You're going to, in one of our courses, the couples course, you take that course, it will change the way you look at relationships, most likely for the rest of your life. So here's a key. This is another writer downer. If you don't feel resourceful, don't have the conversation. It's like thinking about if your car is running on empty, don't go on a 200-mile trip across the desert. It's not going to go well. So one of the ways of avoiding conflict is preventing it in the first place by going, wait, I know you want to talk about money. I know you want to talk about career. I know you want to talk about the kids. I know you want to talk about something really important. I am stressed out right now, and my cup, my emotional cup, is empty. I have no resources right now. I do not feel resourceful. Give me an hour. Let me eat dinner. Let me talk to you in the morning. Let me go work out. Like for me, if I'm not feeling resourceful, I go for a mountain bike ride. Come back from mountain bike ride, I feel really resourceful. So what you want to do is, the first part is prevent a lot of conflicts by making sure you set yourself up and you set your partner up. And here we go. Set up to win. Set yourself up. Set your partner up to win. Hi, Elaine. Where is everybody calling in from? Sherry, I think you were from Canada. Elaine, where are you from? And if you're listening, let me know where you're from. So the idea here, the best way to catch a conflict is catch it early in the acorn phase, or let somebody know, I'm really triggered right now. What I need is a hug. Or when you see your partner's triggered, honey, what do you need to feel safe right now? Are you even in a place where you can have this conversation? It's a really important thing to look at. This is what we've already talked about, so I'm going to skip right on by. Our head, our heart, or our hurt. Our head, logic, love, loss. When we're in our reptile brain, I guess there is one other key thing I want to say on this. There's a difference here. Speaking from and listening from. Listening from is a critical concept. I want you to think about that. Where are you listening from will decide how do you listen. If you're listening from your head, what are you listening for? You're listening for the facts. What are the facts? What's the logic? What's the understanding? What's the problem I need to solve? If you're listening from your heart, you're listening for feelings. You're listening for connection. You're listening for emotions. If you're listening from your reptile, you're trying to figure out who's the enemy. What do I need to feel safe? What do I need to defend myself? It's really important to understand where you are and what's going on. By the way, I would love it if you let me know, does this work for you? This is the first time that I'm kind of doing the notes like this, so you can see them and I can write on them, and it feels very interactive to me. But does it feel good to you? Does it feel like you're part of the learning experience? Now, this is God, we've got a lot of writer downers here, but this is another writer downer. All communication is one of two things, and it's really all emotional communication is one of two things. It's either an act of love or a cry for help. So I'll give you an example, and you tie it in: act of love, cry for help. I either want to give you something, that's the act of love, or I want to receive something, that's the cry for help. The problem is when we're triggered, the way we cry for help almost guarantees we're not going to get it. It's sort of like, just think about this. If you come home, if you want to make love to your partner, you haven't made love in weeks, and you go to your partner and you say, honey, you must be feeling pretty cold and frigid and distant because we haven't made love in weeks. And it's really, tonight's the night. You better get with it because I'm getting pretty disappointed in you. So that's a what? Is that an act of love or cry for help? It's definitely a cry for help, but the problem is the cry for help, it almost guarantees that they're not going to want to meet that cry for help because of the way that we're doing it. We're making it feel like a demand, and what does it need to be versus a request. And in act of love, what we want to do is make sure that the act of love lands well. So what does landing well mean? At one point, it wasn't at one point, I still am dyslexic, grammarly impaired. I miss words in sentences. I miss letters in words. And it's a challenge for me. And I was engaged to someone who was an English major, went on to become a principal. And so she was correcting my spelling. Now, at some levels, for her, it was probably an act of love in the way that she wanted to contribute to me. And the way that she did it, though, it felt like, what it felt like is BSW, bad, stupid, wrong. I was being made bad, stupid, and wrong for the way I spelled. And that creates shame and resistance. And rather than leaning in and wanting to know more and go, honey, tell me more. How can I spell that? It did the exact opposite. By the way, let's see, I'm putting it in again. But if you go to argueless.com, It's going to message you on Facebook Messenger. You'll have to follow along, but it shows you how you can download that book if you want to have a free copy of it. It's normally $19.97 on Amazon right now. And it was a bestseller on Amazon, but you can still head out there and if you want the hard copy, you can get it. If you don't want the hard copy, you can get it for free. All right, just a few more minutes, and then I am going to head out for my bike ride. Taming your triggers, there are 3 levels here. The first level is alert. And alert is like in my house, we have a squeaky floor. There's a cat over there, a dog under here, my partner. And in the middle of the night, I'll be sleeping and I'll hear a squeak and it will wake me up and I'll alert. Where's the cat? Where's the dog? Is it a person? Is it what's going on? If I can recognize it and go, oh, that was the dog, I go from alert right on back to sleep. So I go, do it that way, right on back. Now, if I can't recognize it, I move up to alarm and I might sit up. I go, is that friend or foe? Threat? Is it dangerous or is it okay? Now, if again, the same thing, if I can identify it, it might take me longer. Like at this first one, it might take me 3 minutes, 5 minutes to go back to sleep. It might take me 15 here. Now, here's where it gets even worse, is if it gets up to attack, where it's like, I don't think it's a dog, I don't think it's a cat, I think it might be a person or a threat. There's some threat in the house. When this gets triggered, it takes a very long time to get back down to normal and to go to sleep again. My adrenaline's going. I'm ready. I am looking for the battle. I am looking for the fight. And whatever moves, that's what I'm thinking might be the danger. Now, in relationships, that's what creates a lot of conflict. Somebody's triggered. They're looking for who to attack. Wow. Well, some of you are still here. Thank you. I'm basically checked back in to check out. My computer froze, and there I was talking away, and it just it had stopped running. So I've got a few more minutes left, and then I'm gonna head on out. I so appreciate it. And I'd love to hear, what did you get from our time together? What made the biggest difference for you? What made the biggest impact? I'm going to see if I can get my side screen running here at the same point so you can see the last slides. There we go. All right. So, yes, all those people who went, thank you for that. And here we go. Can you see me now? Oops, looks like it froze again. Wow. All right. I don't know whether it's working or not, but I'm going to go as if it is, and then I'm just going to end here shortly. So thank you for your time. That's the core question. Honey, what do you need to feel safe again? That's when you're dealing with somebody who is triggered. How do you deal with them to get them so that they come back into their heart? Because it doesn't work at all to try to talk to them when they're in there. So there's a lot more to cover here, but basically, if you want a remarkable relationship, you need remarkable relationship skills. And so that's something that, find somebody that can help you do that, whether it's with me taking the couples course or getting private, personalized, customized coaching to deal with your specific situation, or someone like Scott Katamas, who is a master of empathy and understanding, or Debbie G. Find somebody that works for you and get yourself coached. So thank you for your time. I will talk to you later. I hope you got a lot out of tonight. I would love to hear in the comments, even if you're listening to the replay, what you got from tonight and what were the key points. And I will, as best I can, respond to any questions that you have, whether it's now live or in the future. Thank you. Ciao.